I loved it being a dad, even though 10 days a month I'm gone for 24 hours. I still have 20 days off a month to where I can do all of those things. So I was able to do the reading in the kids' elementary school, do the fire safety talk, be a chaperone on a field trip. And a lot of 9 to 5 dads I know will have never experienced that in their lives.
I once saw an F-16 blow up as they're literally touching down and it's blowing up. These guys are jumping out of the cockpit and the firemen are just drenching them in that foam.
You don't know when the bell's going to go off. So it's really hard to fall asleep. And when you do, I don't have time to collect myself. I got 30 seconds to get to the rig. If it's a fire run, I got to get my gear on.
All right, Mark Andrew, welcome to Tales from the Shift. How you doing today, man?
Doing very good, Shane.
Glad to have you here. First time we had a fireman. We've been trying for a while to get firemen on here. Apparently you guys are very busy saving lives, I guess. So just a little heads up. Towards the end of the show, I'm going to ask you what is a secret about being a fireman nobody knows.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, why don't you tell us basically what your job is?
Surprisingly varied in most suburbs of major cities. I'm in Dearborn. Actually, I just retired from Dearborn, and we are Detroit's western border. We're the headquarters of the Ford Motor Company. Probably I think we're the fourth largest city in the state, possibly the third or the fourth largest fire department. So we are a suburb, but we do have a big city feel to our call volume. And so, like all suburbs, we do the ambulance and the fire trucks inside the fire station. So we are a dual role. In our department, everybody has to be licensed as a paramedic because we keep the paramedic supplies on the fire trucks as well. So this way, if all 6 of our ambulances happen to be busy on a call at the same time, which happens at least 2 times a day, 3 times a day, every day of the year, there's going to be a confluence of just everybody's gone. So we can send fire trucks to get the ball rolling until we can get an ambulance freed up or some mutual aid help from our neighbors. So we're all cross-trained in all the jobs. And as you promote up, you have to do every job below you. They don't allow you to skip a lot of promotions. So all of our officers and engineers were firefighters on the ambulance as well, which I believe makes you a better boss.
Nice. So how often do you get called out for a fire related thing, even if it turns out to be nothing?
I would say 25% of our calls are fire or car accident based. 75% of our calls are medical runs. And so our department does 18,000 calls a year. The station I was at my last 7-8 years, a weekday we would do 20 to 25 a day. So I had 2 ambulances, 1 fire engine, which I was staffed on, and then the chief's car. So I was at the central station, so we had our supervisory chief for the 24-hour shift. And so between all 3 of us going on however many medicals, however many car accidents, whether they're fender benders or real bad accidents, the fire alarms, the fires that turn out to be small and 1 engine could handle it, or turn out to be a real fire, it's 20 to 25 a day. And with us getting maybe a legit working fire where we're going to be there a couple hours about once a month.
Okay.
But we have such a great response. We are getting a lot of fires, but so often that first fire truck can go in with an extinguisher or a small hose on a reel and just knock it down while it's still on the stove, while it's still in the dryer, while it's still on the nightstand, before it turns into multiple rooms going. So a lot of our fires, because of our good staffing and the investment our city's made, we keep a lot of those fires at bay in the initial stages.
Nice. So how did you end up in the firefighter world?
My dad was a firefighter, and like you see in a lot of fire departments across the country, it is a multi-generational vocation. And coincidentally, my dad worked for this same department. But back in the 90s, it was very hard to get hired. Back then, you only had to be a basic EMT. So it's, advanced first aid, an automatic defibrillator, and you could ride on an ambulance and just do the first aid and drive people to the hospital. Since then, they've increased it to paramedic, which is another 2 to 2.5 years of schooling. The national licensure exam is much, much more difficult. So it's a lot harder to get that license, and it's whittled the job pool down. But back in the day, it was very, very hard to get a job. And so even having a father in the service didn't really help a lot because there were a lot of kids that wanted to do it. And we would routinely show up at a high school gym with 800 kids taking the civil service test for one job opening. And so after 7 years of trying, working at the private ambulance, working for a part-time fire department in a smaller town, building my resume, getting experience, going back to school and upping my licensure. After 7 years, Dearborn called, and I would have gone anywhere that offered me a career, but I was so thankful it was Dearborn because it was such a great city.
Yeah. Yeah. We had Alex Bednar on the show before. He was paramedic, and he and his whole family are firefighters. And I remember him saying that basically you're kind of bred into it. Like they just kind of went
Yeah,
right
you
on down the
just
line.
see it every day and it looks fun, it looks rewarding. You're never gonna get rich, but you're taken care of. The benefits are decent. Um, we've made some huge labor management concessions in the last 10 years to be a good citizen within our community in terms of finances. But the benefits are still decent, and you can make a nice middle class living and do a fun job and know you're doing worthwhile work.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, saving people's lives. How high? I mean, there's nothing higher than that, as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree, and it doesn't happen every day. the the hardest part of the job by far is dealing with the mundane nature of it. So if the two ambulances in my station have 10 calls, 11 calls each a day, 3 to 4 of them might be really, really sick, maybe one of them critically sick, and maybe not even that. Are sick but do need to go to the hospital, but you're easily going to have five of them a day are things where there's not even a medical complaint. It's a retirement home or a nursing home that is just understaffed and just wants people sent out. There are homeless people that just need rides to the hospital because they have nowhere else to go. There are people that think they will get seen faster for their cut on their pinky finger if they go by ambulance. And so we will have the family follow us in the car to the ER. And so you have to deal with the stress of people just calling all day long for things that you would never call 911 for. But you're right. When it is critical, when you did make a difference, the satisfaction of that, plus on a physical sense, the adrenaline of that uh, is not only satisfying, but it's a fun rush.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it can be a little bit hard getting hired. Have you ever known anyone to quit? And if so, why? Even after they've gone through the whole process and gotten in there.
Yes. Now, doesn't happen a lot now, but back in the late 90s, I knew so many talented people that trudged away for 7 to 10 years, applying to department after department after department. They got their basic EMT, but they struggled to get their paramedic license because it is a very tough class. The licensure exam, board exam is very, very hard, and they couldn't get over that hump. They couldn't find departments that would only hire basics. And so after a decade, yes, it was very common back in the day for people to give up and just go to a police academy and get a police job, switch careers and go into nursing, or just go into a building trade. Now it's a little bit easier. If you can get paramedic, you can go to a fire academy and get your fire academy 1 and 2 certificates. Um, at least in Michigan, and from what I've heard across the country, you will have no problem finding an employment. Most suburban departments have open applications because they just don't have enough kids to date filling them out.
Why do you think that is?
It's twofold. One, it's become more difficult. So I used to teach at a community college where we had a paramedic program with the med terminology, the basic EMT, the clinical time for the basic EMT, which is a credit hour based thing, and then taking the paramedic class. The paramedic class itself is a year to a year and a half. Then the clinical and internship hours. You were in for more credit hours to get a paramedic license than you were to get the associate in nursing. It was 72 credit hours for paramedic. It was 68 credit hours for associate in nursing. It's not a bad thing. But back then, it wasn't, there were fire jobs waiting left and right. You were still graduating and having to work private ambulance, go work in an emergency room, go work for a volunteer fire department, and kind of climb that ladder a little bit, get that real world job experience before the full time big cities would look at you. Um, and then while you're building that resume, paramedic in an ER or paramedic on a private ambulance might only pay $12 an hour, where nurse right out of school, I have easily met 7 or 8 in the last 5 years that went and got their associate or just a nursing certificate just to get employed. And if they're willing to work weekends, holidays, and nights in a busy ER, have no problems making 40 an hour plus 20 an hour bonus, sometimes with holiday bonuses or double time bonuses. So I easily run into nurses that year one are making 80, year 2 or 3 making 120 a year. And that's for less, and that's for less credit hours.
Right. Yeah, we've had 2 nurses on the show already, and I
Mhm.
was actually surprised. I asked them both the same question. Do you think nurses are underpaid? And both of them said, "No. No, they're paid just fine."
Yeah. In fact, they can't. Yeah, the hospital I was a tech at, yeah, they were throwing suitcases and fistfuls of bills at nurses. Please pick up this shift. We'll bump it to $90 an hour. We can't fill these shifts. In fact, it used to be like this. I loved your conversation with the ICU nurse. Um, but this was when I came on into the career field, you could not, at the Detroit area hospitals, whether it's the main Detroit trauma centers or the bigger suburbs, the Royal Oak, the Dearborn, the Ann Arbor, or just the main trauma centers. You couldn't be a nurse in the ER unless you had 5 years on in that hospital system, and at least 2 of them were step up: ICU, CCU, pre-op or post-op. Now I could come right from the licensure exam of the nurse, go out to the parking lot, and there's job recruiters right there. Can you start tomorrow?
Nice. Guess we need more nurses. All right. Um, all right, for this next question, what does a typical shift look like? And I would imagine there is no such thing as a typical, but
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, I've heard of the whole 24-hour thing for
Yes.
firefighters. Is that pretty common? What would you say?
Yes. It's very common. Uh, it's to reduce on the shift changes. Um, what's nice about the fire service is you come in and your day is your day. And so I'll come in at 8 in the morning. I stay till 8 the next morning. What's nice for the citizens is at 8 in the morning, we got to figure out, all right, how many people do we have at work today based on how many are assigned to the shift, how many are off sick, how many are on vacation, how many are on a duty injury, how many are released to go to a training class. So each day starts with us figuring out, well, I need 3 people for every fire truck. I need 2 people for every ambulance. How many of these can I put in service today based on how many people we got? And then which station has got to loan a body to the other station to keep all those rigs in service. So there's rigs that are in and out of service every single day at 8 in the morning. And it's a benefit to the citizens that we only go through that hassle once a day. If we were to do 8 hour shifts, um, we would have to then be calling rigs out 3 times a day as we shuffle all the people around. And so the 24-hour shift is a real benefit to the public because once we get our staffing set, you have your protection for 24 hours. And it's great for us because now I'm going to work 10 to 11 24-hour shifts a month. The key is they're split over 2 days because I work from 8 in the morning until midnight and then midnight to 8 in the morning. So it's technically over 2 calendar days. We just call it a day. But if you got slammed after midnight and you haven't been to bed, it's not like you really have a day off. You are actually on a recovery day. And so it does become a bit of a slog, especially when you're younger in your career and you want to work two jobs to earn money for your family. And then so going on no sleep to go be that tech in an ER or go pound some nails on a construction site or go work for that landscaper, it gets to be a challenge.
Yeah. So other than the odd work schedule, is there any other cost to a person for this job that you would say?
For sure. Because the day itself does follow some patterns, even though you are right. No 2 days are completely alike. However, when you come in the morning, we know you're gonna check your rig out. So if I'm an ambulance, I'm checking the driver's checking out the fluids and the coolants. Does it start? Are all the light bulbs flashing? Writing up any mechanical issues. The person in the back of the ambulance with the patient is going through the medical bag, checking the dates on all the supplies, checking the levels of fluids, checking the levels of um, oxygen in all the various bottles. Even if the rig was used the day before, you still got to check that stuff every day because you never know. Did something get missed? Did something get bumped and is now going to be empty? So those checks are critically important. And the same as if you're assigned to the fire truck. um, yes, they didn't get any fires yesterday, but I'm still going to check this air pack because what if it got jostled and the valve got hit and the air leaked out slowly throughout the day? Accidents can happen, so we got to check all those tools every single day. So the mornings are decently busy with that. Then we have to clean up our station. We don't hire janitors to come in. It's our house. It belongs to us. It's where we live. So you do take a pride in doing that. So we have some patterns that help us out. And I think those patterns do help manage the day, help manage the stress. Where we do have a benefit that does help with dealing with the challenges of the job is some of the firehouse traditions. And one of the biggest ones is the meals. So we assign a cook for the day and then they make up a lunch and a dinner menu. We take the fire truck over to the grocery store or to the produce market and we spend our morning doing that, hopefully. And if there's enough 911 calls, we just abandon that plan and go grab some carry out. And then we hopefully will sit down for lunch. And if we're all together, we'll sit down. If a call comes in, you push your plate away and you get up and leave, and we'll put your food in the refrigerator for you. So there's always a camaraderie and a tradition to how we go about the meals as well. And I've always felt that those traditions of us coming together for a meal are ways to manage the day and manage those challenges because without that grounding of camaraderie coming together having those meals, whether they're good meals or we're going to spend our time just constantly making fun of the cook, it doesn't matter. It's going to be us coming together hanging out and talking about the day. And then when we get to a serious call later in the day or a string of calls and we're all just beat tired, we're all in it together. And so as the day goes on, we might hold a training class. We might watch a video and tabletop some training. We might do some hands on training if we have some newer tools or have a rookie on the job. But as we get through the afternoon, we try to scale that back because we do want the people to pace themselves. It is a challenge if we're going to be there for 24 hours. As a boss, I can't be saying, all right, guys, I know we just finished lunch cleanup, but I want you to raise these ladders on the building and I want a full ladder drill and it's 85 degrees outside and we're going to go ahead and raise these ladders until you're gassed because I want to push you to your limits. And then all of a sudden they get 5 back-to-back medical runs. And then I got guys passing out from dehydration, or I got guys at 2 in the morning that the ambulance veers off the road because the guy falls asleep in the middle of a call because I wasn't allowing them to pace themselves. So uh, the job can be busy, but a good manager will find ways to get the crew to take those breaks, pace themselves, allow themselves to rehab. So that's also built into the day, and that's what helps us manage our stress.
Yeah. I think it's great to eat your meals together. I mean, how many people go to work and they're eating their lunch in their car?
Yes.
because they don't have anybody to hang out with.
Uh-huh.
They're just surviving. You know, I come here for the paycheck. I go
Yes.
home. You know, there might be someone eating their meal in their car right now, and you know, I think it's
Absolutely.
great to be able to bring everybody together and get
I
friendship.
love
Right?
it. Yes. It is a huge benefit to the fire service that we're able to do that. It makes being a boss so much easier. And I've had a chance to meet some people in the corporate world, and they're not only fascinated, they're jealous of that because they talk about
They should be.
um, the pressure to get deadlines done, the pressure to impress the corporate overseers, the bosses, the VPs, the directors. Um, you're not even getting lunches anymore. So you're not even getting people going to water coolers and break rooms. Everybody's working at their cubicle. And so even though they technically get a half hour paid lunch, nobody leaves their cubicle. They're just working. And so they're they're struggling in the corporate world to develop teams and camaraderies and partnerships. And those things are just baked into our culture.
You remind me of that show. I think it was in the '70s called. I think it's called Emergency.
Yes, it was.
And if you're calling the opener, they're eating. I think they're eating, and they all push their meals away, and
Yes.
because
Yeah.
the call
That
came
one
in.
is
But
shockingly realistic. Some of the modern ones get a little soap opera ish. I can't say I'm a big TV watcher,
Chicago
but it
Fire.
is. I mean, you got to tell stories. So you're going to have relationships and you're going to have dating and you're going to have breakups and you're going to have uh, character deaths. And so there's always going to be stories and dramas. And that's what a TV drama is. But it's rarely things that I see as realistic. On top of just with CGI and the stunts they could perform now, it does get a little Hollywood flashy, outlandish, but something about that emergency show is grounded in a little more realism. And I think a lot of it is watching them just go on routine medicals physically in people's homes.
Yeah.
And one thing about emergency, I'm sorry, the tone system that they send the calls out to is exactly like the technology we still have today.
Wow.
Yes, this is
Interesting.
exactly how it works, and it's been that way for 40 years.
Hey, you made it this far into the video. I just want to say thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. And if you think you have what it takes to be on the show, email me at booking@talesfromtheshift.com. We'll get you on here also. Mark, is there any way that you feel that this job has affected your relationships outside of work?
It can, yes, it absolutely can. People say in police and fire, the divorce rate is high. I certainly don't see it higher than in the normal, everyday 9 to 5 job. But it can be a stressor on a family. I loved it being a dad because even though 10 days a month I'm gone for 24 hours, that's 10 days a month that I'm not able to take the kids to the practice or pick them up from school. I still have 20 days off a month to where I can do all of those things. So while you're missing a third, I'm way more available on the other 2/3 of stuff. So I was on 2/3 of the days able to do the reading in the kids' elementary school, do the fire safety talk during a school day, be a chaperone on a field trip. And a lot of 9 to 5 dads I know will have never experienced that in their lives because they're a Monday through Friday corporate job. So to me, the fire service schedule was great. Also, though, depends on how you manage it. One, there could be stressful calls, and you have to manage that stress so you don't bring that stress home. Sometimes you see happiness, sometimes you see tragedy. And so you need to make sure that you're keeping your mental health a priority. Do you have somebody in your family you could talk to? Do you have a coworker you could confide in so you're not bringing that stress into the household? And then there's just the practical, the lack of sleep. That was the thing that was certainly a challenge, especially when you're a dad of young kids. You get home. I had a wife, and so stayed home with the kids the first couple of years. As they get a little bit older, she's going to start revisiting some part-time work where she could schedule on the days that I'm off. And that's a common thing. So we're avoiding having to go to daycare all the time. So on days where she would pick up some part-time hours or re-enter the workforce, and I would come home having slept maybe an hour because I'm on the ambulance and I went out 4 times the night before. um, I would have to find a way to manage that having those small children. I was very, very lucky that my kids learned early on that if I gave them a little cup of goldfish crackers and a sippy cup, they could give me an hour and a half. And so I was happy with that medium of they would watch their cartoons for an hour and a half, and they would just know dad's going to take a nap. And then um, uh, we always had a funny joke between us. Do you mind hearing it?
Go ahead.
I would say to them, all right, what's the rule? And they would say, we don't bothers you on Wester's Bweden. Yeah, the Bwedens. And so that was always our joke, that they could come get me if they needed it, but just make sure you really need to come get me. And I would let them know, hey, last night was a good night. We're going to go do some fun stuff. Hey, last night I did not sleep. Please watch your little cartoons on the Disney Channel for an hour and a half. Here's your crackers. Come get me if
Yeah.
you need me, though. And so
Yeah.
to me, it ended up being a wonderful job to have when you got a family.
Yeah. You know, I guess I should have asked it before when you're saying the hours. So you went in at 8 a.m. and you're off at 8 a.m. When is the next 8 a.m. shift? Would it be 24 hours after that, or is it
Yes,
more? Okay.
exactly. So if I go in at 8 o'clock on a Monday, I'll go home 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. So I have the rest of Tuesday off, even though I work the Tuesday midnight. And then I'll come in at Wednesday, go home on Thursday. I'll come in on a Friday, and then I will have 4 days off. So the rest of Saturday, all of Sunday, all of Monday, all of Tuesday. So those are 3 days where I could sleep in, unless I got a side job. And then, so Wednesday would be the first day of the next cycle. And then it would be Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Then it would be Friday, Sunday, Tuesday. It'd be Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So if I just know the 3 days, I could write out my calendar in just by doing the math and just counting.
Interesting. Yeah. So you have a rotating schedule.
Absolutely.
I know that at my work they pushed back on that. When I was in the Air Force and I did air traffic control, we had basically an 8-day schedule. So it would rotate forward like that. But I mean, I'm saying we didn't work 8 days in a row. I'm saying we worked six
Gotcha.
days plus 2 off. So it
Got it.
would rotate, right?
I see.
Whereas it adds up to 7 days in Chicago. I'm wondering if there are any fire departments where they try and make it where it doesn't rotate because people want to stay on specific days.
Um, I have yet to hear of them, but there are some departments across the country that will do 48 in a row and then having more days off in between. Our department doesn't to do that just because the call volume's so high. That second to 24 hours is legitimately physically hard to get through. Because what a lot of people don't know is they say, well, say you go to bed at 11 and you get 3 911 calls. I don't see what the big deal is. You could still sleep in between them. Well, it's really hard to do that because here's the way you got to look at it: is you fall asleep, and this is the way I would explain it to a layperson. I'm going to set up a bell, an alarm clock in your bedroom, and I'm going to call that alarm clock at any time that I choose. You got to get up, get dressed. You got 45 seconds to get in your car. I need you to drive around the block 10 times, get out of your car, do a bunch of jumping jacks, get in your car, drive around the block 10 times, go back to your house and do a computer spreadsheet report for about a half an hour, and then go back to sleep and show me how long it takes you to go back to sleep. And then I'm going to wait 2 hours and I'm going to call you again, and you got to do the whole thing again. That's what being on an ambulance is like. You don't know when the bell's going to go off. So it's really hard to fall asleep. And when you do, I don't have time to collect myself, to stretch, to loosen that back. I got 30 seconds to get to the rig, 45 seconds to get to the rig. If it's a fire run, I got to get my gear on. I got to listen to what the dispatcher's saying. I have to mentally prepare for it. Um, but what helps us out is in the middle of the night, if it's so and so anxiety attack, so and so person on this street corner, and it's kind of mundane. It's a slog to get out that door and do that 3 times a night. But when they say there's a child not breathing, there's smoke coming from a house, there's a natural adrenaline to that that provides us that benefit. So for us, the job gets easier the harder it is and more challenging it is. The hard parts are the mundane and the long hours.
Interesting. I know for a fact that some people, when you talk about being able to go to sleep, wake up, go to sleep, there are some people that can sleep anywhere and they can fall asleep in 5 minutes. But there are some people, they just can't do it. So they're not going to get that same amount of recuperative rest
I'm the same
that
way.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
have been an insomnia person probably the last 15 years of my life. And I don't put as much blame on being a firefighter. To me, it's just, I just have that active mind. I can't shut it off. It's all thoughts. Um, whether I was working on the book, whether I was preparing for a training class, whether I was working on another project, I'm just rehearsing thoughts in my head while I'm laying there on the pillow, and then realize, oh my God, I'm talking to myself like the FedEx guy in the 80s commercials, and it just doesn't stop. So yeah, I'm finding myself taking the melatonins, taking the Benadryls, try to just kind of help regulate that.
Sorry to hear that.
Well,
Okay.
that's quite all right. I've just learned to live. I'm just that light sleeper, up and down
Yeah.
person. It's just going to be my personality.
All right. Um, how about mistakes? Would you be willing to reveal any
Yeah,
type of mistakes you ever
absolutely.
did on the job?
hmm This is one I brought up in my book. Um, when I promoted to officer, and this is common in a lot of, I can't say police departments, but a lot in the fire services. You're a junior firefighter, promote up to senior firefighter, maybe promote up to driving the fire truck. So a lot of departments off of a 25 to 30-year career average your, if you want to be an officer, probably in the 15-year range before you reach that lieutenant stage. And maybe the 20-year stage, you could maybe make a captain, uh, and maybe 21, 22, 23, maybe make a chief officer. Um, so there is an experience level that goes to that. I felt I was ready when I promoted to lieutenant. I had paid a lot of attention to the traits that I wanted to portray as a company officer, the type of boss I wanted to be. I knew I did not want to be a micromanager, but I knew I wanted to be present and available for the crew because I did not like the bosses that delegated everything and then just went and hid, and all of a sudden would be shocked when things weren't going well 6 months down the line. So I wanted to be available. I wanted them to be able to trust me. I wanted, and a lot of it was I wanted that trust as an officer. I wanted to go earn that badge and show them that I can be trusted. I've got job skills. A lot of it though was just I like doing the job. And the mistake I made, and I didn't realize it for about a month, maybe 2 months, I realized I was doing too much. I would show up on a regular routine medical scene and say, hey guys, let me pitch in. Here, I'll hook up those EKG leads. Here, let me get that blood pressure for you. Let me start that IV. And they would always say, no, Lieutenant, we got it. And I would say, oh, come on, I want to pitch in. And I kept thinking in my head, oh, they're going to appreciate this young lieutenant showing us that he's got these job skills. And in a pinch, we could trust that he'll be a team member. And what I realized after a couple of months was they're seeing me not only take jobs away from them, so they're not getting the reps in doing those jobs, they're starting to perceive it as I don't trust them to do it by themselves. And I didn't know enough to sense that. I had to actually be self-aware and self-reflect and watch those nonverbal cues of their behavior towards me. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm doing way, way too much. I get it now. I got to step back. And so learning the balance between you can count on me in a pinch. If somebody's dying, I could jump in and we're all going to take a job. We're at a fire. You could trust my job skills. I'm going to be right next to you. I will never ask you to do something I'm not willing to do myself. But on the routine calls, I could just step back. Hey guys, you got it? Hey, did you think about this? Perfect. All right. I'll leave you alone. All right. Good work, everybody. And then I would just go ahead and back away and leave it to them. But that so took some work. I didn't get it right away.
How about unwritten rules in the job of a firefighter? Is there anything that you had to learn that you learned throughout the years?
Yes. Not only do we have traditional unwritten rules, I know it's an oxymoron. We actually write them down and give them to new hires. So we give them a list of unwritten rules and write on the header unwritten rules. And it's a way when we hire a young man to say, hey, these are the things that are outside of the rule book, but we're going to look for that you need to be doing to show us that you're learning the job, that you want to be here, that you want to be a good team member. And so, yes, when you're a rookie, there's a ton of unwritten rules. We want you to be the first one to get here, show up early, be the first one to show up, be the last one to leave. Uh, when you're done eating your meal, hop up and start helping with the dishes. Don't be the one slowly eating your meal while everybody else is working. That doesn't mean you got to choke it down and rush to get through it. But when everybody else is done, be there and be present. Whatever time we start the daily chores, don't wait to be told. Just pick up a mop and start mopping. So if we start at 9 in the morning, I don't want to have to come find you to say, hey, it's chore time. I want you to just know. Um, uh, if there's a special project around the station, something breaks and it needs to be fixed. We get something delivered, it needs to be put away. We get a new cabinet and we got to assemble this thing and put supplies on it. Take a lead on that project, because there's a benefit to all of these things. One, it's taking pride in your work. Two, it's learning about the physical station and workplace you work in. So if I ever need something, you could then say, oh, yes, I was there. Here's where we keep that, because they might just be things that I've missed because I'm dealing with my stuff. And so we want that person in that rookie year to be a go-getter. Because in that rookie year, we're really looking for somebody to show us they could be a person who's trusted in a pinch. So you got to kind of earn that trust because we don't really know you. And it's your way of proving to us the type of worker you're going to be. And so for us, that rookie year, that probationary year, is not just an administrative human resources thing. Um, that when your probation's done, you get assigned a different class within the civil service, human resources angle of it all. Uh, uh, there's a tangible thing to, and even an esoteric thing to have completed this journey. There's a reward at the end of it when you're off probation. A lot of young men and women on the department will actually just go throw a party and just say, hey, thanks for all the things you taught me. I'm going to pick up the tab at this bar for a couple of hours to say thanks to you, because now they feel that they have made this milestone. And not that we're hazing them for 12 months, but we do expect more of them for 12 months.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So I've already mentioned Alex Bednar, paramedic that was on a previous episode. He described a process of numbing out over time where cumulative exposure to emergencies slowly deadened his emotional responses. Does that match anything you've experienced in your fire service?
Absolutely. For us in southeastern Michigan, we see it manifest more in the way people handle, and there's a couple of ways you could phrase it. You could just say dealing with low income, dealing with an immigrant population, dealing with people that don't have other resources, or the word that we see a lot in government, 911 abuse. So for us, we have to manage against the deadening of those sensibilities, because one of the more prevalent disciplines we have is you go on 37 panic attacks, and then the 38th one turns out they had a heart arrhythmia. They weren't faking it. And then you sat them on the bench, sat them in the lobby at the ER, because you didn't perform a full assessment to rule out the real stuff. Because, oh my God, well, I've had 90 of these in the last month. How was I supposed to know this time this 32-year-old had a heart arrhythmia? Well, you, that's why we just go through the paces. And so for us, the hard work, the deadening of those sensibilities, has to be managed at my level of being a company officer, because I don't want people to spend their entire careers in that false sense of security of only following patterns. You have to keep an open mind in medicine, and we've got to check people for stuff. And I know it adds to the healthcare system. I know it adds to the burden of ERs. I know it adds to the cost of everything. It would be way cheaper to go to the ER if they just treated you for what it was likely to be the cause. But so many people get CAT scans, so many people get MRIs, so many people get full blood labs, and it turns out that it's a panic attack, or it turns out that they just have indigestion. But ERs defensively do a lot of medicine, and we not that we defensively have to act, but you always got to keep that open mind, because man, one time out of 100, that anxiety attack could turn out to be something. So please protect yourself.
All right. I apologize for this question in
Mhm.
advance.
Yep.
There is a perception amongst some people that firefighters are overpaid relative to the
Mhm.
actual risks that they
Yeah.
face, especially as actual fire calls become a smaller percentage of the total work. How would you respond to that?
I No need to apologize. I'm absolutely willing to defend the position that I had. Yes, while it is true that our captains and battalion chiefs are going to probably make, I mean, a Detroit, a Chicago, a DC, a Baltimore, Philadelphia, they're going to see a ton of fires, but they make a lot less money than we make in the suburbs. But the fact is we don't get a lot of people putting in for these jobs anymore. So we have upped the pay, and when you up the entry level pay, it or bump it by a couple percent, it bumps everybody else a couple of percent. And to encourage people to want to be leaders, to actually be those chief officers and those captains and leading those crews and do the work that's necessary for that. It would be so much easier for me to stay a junior firefighter and never promote up and take that responsibility on. But by offering some pay bumps, and to know that, hey, my first 15 years, I'm going to make 60 grand a year, but maybe that last 10 years, I could make 95 to 100. It's not a bad living, but I'm not making 100,000 the whole career. And then a lot of people would ask, well, why does the boss of this fire truck get to make 100,000, possibly even more with overtime? Well, the Ford Motor Company in Dearborn is closing down their headquarters, and they have spent 2 to 3 billion with a B dollars building a new research and engineering facility, where they're moving their corporate headquarters, all of their engineering, to the facilities to where it only housed the hands-on engineers, the dynamometers, the wind tunnels, the clay molder people, the CAD designers. Now it's going to be an all-encompassing campus, to where it's all their trade secrets, it's all their corporate plans, it is all of the things where industrial espionage is a real thing. It is going to be the physical models. It's going to be the experimental cars that they don't want people taking pictures of. What's the monetary value of that? And what's the monetary value when one of these cars blows up on a dynamometer? Because it happens about once a month. This is what the dynamometer is meant to do. It's meant to make the car fail. And what is the value of that to Ford? And what is the amount of taxes Ford pays to a city? How many tens to hundreds of millions are they paying in income taxes, personal property taxes to my city government? And what is the expectation that they're going to get in expertise in protecting that? So while we occasionally run across some citizens that say, "Well, I can't believe your bosses can make 100,000 for a job that you don't need a master's degree." Well, go tell it to Ford. Go tell it to Cleveland Cliffs Steel, who has got a steel manufacturing facility that literally spills steel on the ground and starts fires all the time. How many hundreds of millions of dollars do those pieces of equipment cost, and what's the value of protecting it? So I always look back at, what would you lose if you didn't have that expertise? How many businesses would just go somewhere else to where they can get that protection?
I mean, I would say the opposite of what your example there. You said that, why do you make more than a master's? I think there's a lot of master's degrees that don't
Mhm.
make nearly as much money as they should
Sure.
be making,
Yeah.
or even doctorate degrees. They're making, I mean, making less than six figures. That's ridiculous. Or why, people are putting all these years of schooling in. It just makes sense.
Yes.
All right. So I found this in the news about PFAS, forever
Uh-huh.
chemicals in firefighter
Yep.
gear. It says that this is a problem, that there's a lot of perhaps cancer deaths amongst firemen due to this. I don't know if you heard about this or not.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. What do you have to say about it?
Um, I believe it's something that the fire service has been ahead of for years. Most, I believe all of the new gear in the last couple of years have got the PFAS out. So we're in a much, much better place. A lot of older departments are still wearing older gear, still have to deal with some of that, but it is very easy to get federal, state, or local grant monies to buy gear washing machines to where you could wash your gear after every fire and get the soots out, get the carbons out, and if there were PFASs, get them out. We do encourage our members that if you go on a fire run and then you haven't done your grocery shopping yet, don't go into the store with your gear on. Uh, Take that gear off, put your regular clothes back on, and or just have somebody else go to the store. So there are steps we could take. In Michigan, we've taken a lot of steps into the foam because we've had two Air Force bases that still sometimes use the AFFF aircraft foam. And then that has some forever chemicals in it that they are not able to engineer away from. What we've made sure to do is to more tightly regulate that to airspaces, have better designed water runoffs in those air facilities. So if there is a discharge, they know how to have hazmat people on site to clean it up. And we have eliminated that from the foams that we use in structural firefighting. So we used to, 20 years ago, if you had a combination foam that is good for liquids and ordinary combustibles, you might have still had some of the PFAS in it. I don't believe we've had that the last 15 years. We're keeping it to strict class A foams, which is ordinary combustibles, which are basically just soaps. Makes the water a little bit thinner, reduces the surface tension of the bubbles, allows the water to be more penetrative. So Michigan has done a lot in keeping PFAS to just aircraft and military operation under tighter controls and keeping it out of the municipalities.
Hmm. I once saw an F-16 blow up, and there was a two seat aircraft, and they landed. They knew they were going to have an issue as they're literally touching down, and it's blowing up. The firemen, these guys are jumping out of the cockpit,
Gotcha.
and the firemen are just drenching them in that foam.
Got
And
it.
I wonder if they survived but got the cancer now. I don't know. I mean,
I would imagine they knew what they were doing and can at least shower that off. I always, from my understanding and talking to our hazmat teams, the PFAS was more of a danger when people didn't know what they were dealing with. I don't believe it's a contact thing. Um, it's more of a long-term absorption thing. So I would assume the pilots were fine. The foams can do their job, but the decon afterwards is probably very structured. I would assume at this point they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it was a while ago. I don't know if they knew what they were doing. Also, one of those guys was not a pilot, and it was the first time they ever flew on an airplane. They were just along for the ride.
Oof.
Anyway, how about in your personal life? Is there anything that you've learned from being in the firefighting world that affects you in your personal life, like something you do differently as a result of what you know?
Yes, I have noticed over the course of the career, I'm so much better at interpersonal relations, talking to people, meeting people, managing people. And a lot of that came from being a fire company officer and talking to my peers about just leadership, um, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book. They were just topics that interested me. And so I found myself in a place where I could be um, uh, able to run a project, manage a team of people, in even in different scenarios, uh, holding conversations, learning about other people. I've just enjoyed uh, people and personnel and uh, getting to be around different personalities and manage them. And they were skills I did not have when I started. In fact, I would have been happy just being a firefighter my whole career when I started. And by the time I had 5 years on, I absolutely knew I wanted to be an officer, but I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I set it up as a goal, so I started going to trainings and classes and paying attention to officers I liked and didn't like. So I intentionally spent a decade learning these skills.
What about a hot take? Is there anything that you believe about firefighting or the fire service leadership that some of your colleagues might disagree with?
One of the bigger disagreements we see in the fire service right now is there's a huge talk about and a push towards physical fitness and mental health. Um, I was always on the side of physical fitness is highly important in the job. And I do have to say that is a stride we have made. It was a little more in agreement now. It was something I disagreed with people 15 years ago because when I came on, it was working out on the job was discouraged. If you were young on the job, working out was forbidden. You quote, you got to learn the real way to do it. And I want you practicing the real stuff. And our meals got to be heavy because what if I get a fire in the middle of the night? I need something that sticks to your ribs. And so now we pay so much more attention to fitness and nutrition to the point where we're cooking healthier meals, but we're also not only allowing younger members to work out, we're in, asking them to work out. We're telling them to work out. And if they're not good at it, we'll assign them a peer fitness trainer to provide them that guidance. So my disagreements probably were heavier 10 to 15 years ago because we were still dealing with that old guard of, I don't want these guys working out on the job because I need them to go to the fire in the middle of the night and have all their energy for that. But what happens if you don't get a fire for a month and a half? Um, then what's going to happen? I want people to work out on the job so they can perform at 3 in the morning.
All right. So you had mentioned your book a couple of times, Leading Through the Heat. Why did you write it? Who's it for? What's it about?
I think it's for anybody who wants to be a boss. The lessons could translate to being a first responder or to any job in the corporate world. I started it because I got a GoPro mini cam for my fire helmet. And right after I got it, we lucked into just a string of fires where I was getting 2 to 3 a month for a few months. And so I ended up with a good amount of footage. And since I was on a squad style engine, so I had a little bit more capability than our average fire truck, we're dispatched to every fire in the city, not just the ones in our area. And so, depending on if I'm first, second, or third arriving, I might have these varied different jobs. So I ended up with a bunch of footage of doing all kinds of jobs. And so I got asked to be on fire podcasts. And a lot of them wanted to talk about leadership and bosses that I've had in the past and how do I like to manage crews. And so I looked at my notes and I said, wow, some of these would make some good magazine articles or essays. Then I said, why am I aiming low again? I've had so many articles rejected by every magazine I could think of. Why don't I just knuckle down and see if I could turn these into chapters? And so I did that. And before I knew it, I had 3 chapters. So I said, all right, I guess I'm doing this.
Now, I have a question from the book. There's a quote in there. You said, uh, "So you describe watching an officer hand off an attack line and a firefighter respond with, 'You fucking think so, Larry?' And you wrote that in the moment in the book. You wrote, 'I'm never going to be that guy.' What did you mean by that?"
I didn't want to be the type of boss that would ask people to go where I'm not going to go myself. I'm not going to ask them to do a job that I'm not capable of doing myself. We would occasionally back in the day run across some officers that were nearing retirement. Fitness wasn't a thing, diet wasn't a thing, bodies were breaking down. And so, just one coincidental time, there was an officer who was really close to retirement. And so he chose to wait for the second arriving crew to take the hose line into the house. And so when he pointed, hey guys, it's down there. He said, yeah, of course it's down there. Why are you out here? And so they took the hose line from him and went down, put the fire out. And to him, it didn't matter at all. I just don't want to go in there and do this. Whereas I was standing there saying, oh my gosh, we don't get a fire every day. How do you get one and not want to do this? This is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And so I said, man, when I got 25, 30 years on, I want to keep my fitness up. I want to be able to do this job. And uh, also just for the sake of the crew knowing, I'll never leave them alone.
Nice, nice. All right. So knowing everything you know about this job and everything that you experienced in it, if you could go back to being, I don't know, 20 years old, would you still choose to go down and the path of being a firefighter?
Absolutely. I encourage young men and women to do this. It's a very rewarding job. I do run across some people that have a hard time with the lack of sleep and the stress, but overwhelmingly, the people that go into this career field do it because they love it. We love helping people. It's cool, it's fun, it's hard work. And when it's hard, it's rewarding. So at the end of a day, if I did 25 calls and I'm gassed, I could actually say to my friends and family, hey, I earned my money yesterday. That was really hard. So even when the job's hard, there's this pride you take away from it that is, I think, unique to the fire service. Um, and so, yes, I would absolutely recommend that young people do this. You'll never get rich, but you know what? You'll be taken care of. You can have a good middle class living. And if you don't spend yourself into oblivion, you can have a nice retirement.
Cool. All right. All right, Mark. We're on the speed round now. So basically, these are just some terms I found on the internet that hopefully you've got a comment about. Love it, hate it, talk for an hour about it, whatever you want to do. All right. And I'll just throw them at you and we'll go on. Okay. 2 in, 2 out.
Yes, love it. It's a little flexible, but basically is what it says is if you're on a fire department, big or small, the 2 people who arrive first, and now in my department, we had a 3-person engine, 1 to drive the truck, 1 boss, and 1 person on the back. So the person driving the truck works the controls of the pump panel, and the 2 people go in with the hose line. They can't make that physical entry until the second arriving ambulance, ladder truck, or fire engine shows up. So I've at least got 2 people on the outside in case anything goes wrong. Now, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a delay because most of the time there's a fire. It involves unfolding the hose, stretching it out, grabbing some hand tools. And while I, as an officer, walk 360 degrees all the way around the house, checking the construction style, checking the flow of the smoke, checking to see if there's any bodies hanging out of windows, finding out what we got. So You never just show up and run right in. But we are allowed the flexibility to announce on the radio, I'm bypassing the 2 in, 2 out because the neighbor's telling me there's a victim in the back bedroom. Attention crews, we're entering through the front door to perform a rescue. Second due engine, I need you to grab a line and attack the fire. So I do have some variance around it, but 99% of the time, the 2 in, 2 out is a great rule of thumb in how you operate safely on a fire ground.
The recliner. And it says that as a firefighter who disappears between calls, avoids training, and makes the rest of the crew carry the weight.
Yes. So, like I said, it's very important on a busy fire department to pace yourself. We don't want people go, go, go all day long. I even tell the rookie with a month on the job, every single day, I want you to sit at the kitchen table, take a load off. I want your legs and your back resting. And you're going to look at this map. You're going to look at these EMS protocols. You're going to study some rules and regs. We're going to watch some fire videos. You can watch some PowerPoints. You could watch some YouTube videos on fire tactics and strategy. But I need you sitting down and taking a load off. The more senior members can physically sit in a recliner or lazy boy chair, watch a little TV, scroll on their phone, decompress a little, and even fall asleep for a 1 hour or half-hour power nap. Whatever your body needs to recover, we need that. But there's a line between pacing yourself and you're in the recliner the entirety of the day while everybody else is working, training, preparing meals, reviewing material, practicing skills, and then you're just choosing to separate yourself from them because you like to relax. Could be a fitness issue, could be you're mentally checking out. But for us, the recliner is just a way of um, saying it has its place, but please don't overdo it.
All right. Um, the phrase praise in public, punish in private.
Yes, the good bosses I have had, um, I made a mistake. Call me in the office afterwards. Hey, what's going on? Well, I saw this and I did this. Yeah, did you think about this other thing? Oh, no, I didn't. All right. Here's our rules. Here's our procedures on this. I need you to review some of these. We can be better. Thanks, boss. All right, I got it. I'm going to work on this. And then they'll follow up in a day. Hey, so did you study this? Did you learn this? Where are you at now? Um, and then I've had some bad bosses that right in the moment, blah 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 blah, and just screaming at you while a bunch of stuff's going on. And I'm like, gosh, can't we do this 3 hours from now? Do we got to do this while flames are busting out of this house? Do you really need your pound of flesh that bad that we can't wait? And so I've seen good bosses and I've seen bad bosses, but yeah, I've always loved the people that um, if you did something wrong in confidence, they would take you aside. But if something went well, they would right there at roll call the next morning say, hey, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but at this fire, Joe over here set up the rig in this direction. That was such a heads up move because did you see how he was able to get this ladder in this direction because he was here and not there and the power lines are here and the telephone pole is there. That's a heads up move. You do that in front of everybody.
Yeah. You're answering your questions so well. The screamer was the next question. So we'll just
Gotcha.
cross that one out. How about the phrase, never been in the chief's office?
Well, that always bothered me. Um, yeah, if you can make it 25 years in a career where I've got every day my first 10 years on an ambulance, I've got to decide a treatment for a patient. I've got to talk to an upset family member. I've got to talk to a nurse who could be having a bad day. I've got to make a hospital destination decision, trauma center, burn center, children's center, regular hospital, offsite community hospital, urgent care. I've got to pick a treatment algorithm for is this chest pain or is this trouble breathing? Which route am I taking? I've got all these decisions to make every single day. If I get 25 years and never once did anybody pull me in the office question a decision and say, hey, did you think about this? If you put every little mistake off on somebody else for 20 or 2 decades, you've been avoiding making decisions. Not that we want our officers to be carefree risk takers, but if I've found so many times the officers that bragged about, I've never made a mistake, I've never been in the chief's office, I have a clean record, more than likely they've been sitting on the bench avoiding decision making. And I've never correlated that to being the type of leader that would take the blame for their crew.
All right, Mark, that's the end of speed round. Fantastic job. All right, moving on. So I said I'd come back to this. Mark, what is a secret about being a firefighter that most people would not know or understand?
The thing that I probably have to explain to the most people is the lack of sleep. A lot of people just assume, well, every time I drive by the fire station, I could see a dude sitting in a chair in front of the building, talking on his phone or on the park bench, or there's a crew of them having some cigars on a park bench in front of the station. So obviously you guys are just playing cards all day. Most people don't truly understand the call volume. So just because they have this time where they're sitting there right now, you could still have 25 calls in a day, but you had that one half an hour where nothing was going on. And so many in the public just assume, well, I saw them sitting there, so obviously they were sitting all day. And so they don't really understand the busyness. And they also don't understand the toll it takes to go on calls in the middle of the night and how that interrupts your sleep patterns. Like we talked about, just even if you get 2 calls, it's so hard to fall asleep after doing all of that physical work, going into somebody's house, physically carrying them out, going to an ER. It's all bright lights. Then you go back to the fire station, and then you got to shut it down, hopefully fall back asleep before the next call. It just, the human body doesn't work that way.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Mark Andrew.
All right.
Thanks so much for being on Tales from the Shift. Fireman extraordinaire. I appreciate
This
you
was
coming
a
on,
pleasure.
man.
What a fun conversation.
I'm glad you thought so. Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. And if you'd like to be on the show, email me at booking@talesfromtheshift.com. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you.